I always thought that was really funny.
All right, guys. Well, why don't we conclude with some Q&A, if you guys don't mind? That cool?
Sure.
All
Sure.
right, let's take some questions here. And if you guys want to post any questions, go ahead and post it in this Reddit thread right here. And we'll try to get to them. I got a few that I figured would be good to read out here. Okay, this one from, I think it's Sybil. The NA SC2 scene has been greatly struggling as of late with the death of IPL, NASL's ties to WCS, and MLG's abandonment of the game. In your opinion, what does the NA StarCraft 2 scene need to expand? To expand being the key word, I think.
Could get some good players, because here's the key thing about esports: if you're a really good player, then no matter where you live in the world, there's some organization would pick you up to fly you to events. Because if NA was way better than Europe, for example, then European teams would have NA players in them, and they
Yeah,
would go
but
to
how
all
is
the
that
Dreamhacks.
expanding NA when European teams are sniping up NA players? Right?
What does that mean?
I think
So you're actually asking how we have more NA tournaments. How the fuck would I know? I don't know how to get sponsors on a tournament. What
it's
is
just
this
a
question now?
It's just a fucking question from a viewer, man.
Well,
Scoots, what do you
well,
think? What do you think?
Here's what you do. Every stream viewer buy a lottery ticket, and then if you win, put on the next
God.
MLG. There we go. Problem solved.
Scoots, what do you think?
Fuck. I don't think there's a silver bullet you can shoot at North America and make it magically develop for any game. Again, you can talk about, and it's been beat to death, if you truly region locked WCS, so you had to be a North American, would that give this incentive and this impetus for these magical millions of kids to come out of the woodwork and want to be pros? I don't know. It would dangle an easier attainable carrot because I only have to compete against you and not those guys over there yet. But does that, again, magically make it super popular? No, it doesn't, and again, that's why I am interested to see what they are going to do for the next season, like how they're going to lock it. It sounds like they're locking it maybe based on where you live, but not really like your passport. So I don't know. I think I don't want to say there's not enough events because it seems like there's still a large series of little cups and all sorts of different variety of events that you can join now. Maybe there's not as many Playham things and those kind of tournaments of 2 years ago where Greg, an Idra is not going to enter, but other wannabe, all that crew below has a place to compete, because ladder is ladder. Ladder is not the same anticipation of being in a bracket.
Yeah.
But again, I don't even pay that much attention to that anymore. I thought one of the coolest things that was happening was the college thing, right? Because that's what grows on this side of the pond. Like, you go high school sports, you go college sports, you go pro sports. And if you're really good, you go high school to pro. But there is that natural thing. So is that still rocking and rolling? Is that growing a base of, next level pros for StarCraft? I don't know. I just don't think there's an easy fit.
I think that's along the routes of what we probably need. We just need more of it, more events, small events, tiny events, whatever. And CSL being successful, I think, is a pretty big thing. If we could have that be a place for these players that have to make the decision to go pro or go
I think
school,
we're all supposed
school.
to say if MLG had an open bracket at every tournament,
That wouldn't do. That wouldn't be enough. Jeez, that wouldn't be enough. But
it would help.
I think
it would
help,
help, but it wouldn't be enough. I mean,
No, but
if they too much.
God.
So yeah.
Okay. See, next question.
The thing is, to me, that whole topic is to me, it's like a snore fest because it all comes from the place of, well, how do we get NA to have more tournaments and stuff? Like, why would you limit it to NA? Like, if the game and it has enough players, etc., then it will have a scene. And if there's enough money and people can put on tournaments, it will have tournaments. These things exist almost de facto if they can. They don't have to be artificially engineered, and we have to do something. Oh, we have to lock it to get more players here, and then they can be better and stuff. Like, to me, that's not as interesting. Just have good StarCraft.
You want me to counter
Where
that
are you?
argument?
Where are you from? Wait, where are you from again?
England.
You sound like the most hard. Do you identify with the Republicans in the United States? Because you would come off as a hardcore. How do you feel about social health care and stuff, or affirmative action? Damn.
Oh my god.
Oh no, I'm being serious. That sounded a little bit facetious, but when you talk about not needing to artificially prop up scenes, that's the hugest thing that you always hear about when you talk about free market capitalists that are oh, the market will deal with it, the market will deal with it, the market will deal with it. But I mean, as you grow a little bit older, or not to say that you're young or whatever, but it seems as you look more into things, it becomes necessary that at some point you have to kind of give things a little bit of a head start. You've got to prop things up a little bit to kind of get things started. I don't know. I feel like you're like super extreme on that end of like things will take care of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, organic is one thing.
No, that's how esports was built, was organically. No one came along at the beginning and said, right, I want to start esports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get $10 million. I'm going to host these tournaments. What game shall I play? Well, I want this game to be played because I think it could be popular. And so I'm going to make this the big game. No, what happened is games were played by enough people that they had tournaments to see who was the best. Then enough people watched and were interested in the tournaments that people tried putting tournaments on with money and get a sponsor in. You see how it's artificially growing. So if it doesn't exist now, there is a key reason why it doesn't exist now.
If you tell everybody just to wait and just wait for stuff.
No.
I feel like if we go down this path, I feel like we're getting into the first 3
We're
hours
just
of
discussing.
the show.
Yeah.
Emergency injunction. I think we all know how we feel about this. We're
all right, let's move on.
All
right, Cowduff has a question about LCS. From last week, opinions on this blog post regarding the conditions of lower-tier LCS teams. It's this post right here, guys. And I didn't get a chance to read through it, but I think the blog kind of was talking about their living conditions. This is for a team trying to qualify for LCS.
No,
right?
they were in it. It was Velocity, doesn't it say?
Oh, it's Velocity. Okay.
Yeah.
Velocity was
Velocity.
Yeah, it's Velocity. It was a low tier LCS.
Something like 5 maps out of 28 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. So they were kind of mapping out just the living conditions they had, and it said that they only had 2 computers for 5 people, no beds for a small amount of time, and subpar living conditions. So the Kuda is asking, how often do these things like this fly under the radar in competitive gaming?
But what flew under the radar? That the team mismanaged the money Riot gave them, and they could not figure out how to properly run the
training facility. Do you want a simple solution?
Right.
No one's fault but their own. So
this should have been obvious, okay? So you get a small organization who've never been a big player in esports. They don't have big sponsors. They haven't had big players. But you put them in a league where everyone gets given I think it's like 175 grand for the 2 splits or whatever. So half of that, they get given all this money and basically told, do what a real team does. Make a gaming house, get PCs, feed your players, give them the salary. And then this team, who remember are so shit, they don't have sponsors, they're not a big organization, they haven't been involved before, mismanage all that money and don't do anything right with it. Yeah, gee, I can't see how that could ever happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I like the blog because he tells the story. You know, I mean, he gives the story, but you can't blame LCS or Riot on this. You know, I don't think. You know, it's definitely his story of their experience, but the experience that they helped create.
I think you need a little bit. While I agree that you can't necessarily completely blame Riot, there has to be a little bit of oversight. You can't just that would be like me going to the hood and finding a whole bunch of fucking poor people and being like, I'm gonna give all of you $10,000, and then come back 10 years later and thinking the neighborhood will transform. You have to have a little bit of common sense, you know.
Yeah, and again that goes to Thorin's point about these guys being unexperienced new teams, so to speak. I mean. Just for my own experience, I was the one that negotiated and found the house in Phoenix for EG when it was here. That took me almost 3 months, right? And these guys had a month in California to find a house, you know, and it was bad enough for me to try to find a house. Now, so I definitely feel their pain on all that, but the fact they didn't have enough computers and all that stuff, well, okay, well. Don't you all have computers at home? Why didn't you all bring them? How did you play at home before you qualified? Did you expect someone to magically give you a $3,000 sponsored rig? And again, because his blog doesn't say that he was promised this from Riot or promised that from Riot, and it never happened. It's the story of what happened. So again, I don't have a lot of sympathy that you had a huge shot at this and it didn't work out for you. It's unfortunate, but
Yep.
Okay. As far as I know, Riot actually does take an active involvement because there was a similar scenario before with Team Man where some of them claimed that the owner had stolen money. And as far as I know, I don't know how official this is, but Riot did take some sort of action. And basically, I don't think that guy will be allowed to run a team again and be an LCS and that sort of a thing, you know. So I imagine if it's true when they research it, that there'll be a similar thing here where they'll either tell the organization you have to change things or you can't do it again next season, you know. So I don't think it's
more after the fact fixing. More after the fact, fixing the fire or putting it out than helping them. Now, and again, it sounds like a lot of them had. I mean, again, if you're a landlord, if they all had to find their own houses in the LA area, it's really hard to convince any landlord and their mother that you're not going to destroy their house when you go, oh, it's going to be 5, 6, 7 gaming guys. We're not a family of 4. Again, I went through this in Phoenix, and I had big PowerPoint presentations on all these things to show what EG was, right? Velocity didn't have any of that, right? Yeah, they could say they're with Riot and LCS. So shit, maybe Riot fucking rents out an apartment complex and takes a way more proactive step in that part of it. Maybe they get a bigger sponsorship and everybody gets computers and all those things. And you got like a Beverly Hills 90210 apartment complex with all the teams in their own apartments. And Riot does own it, because then, they would keep a better eye on it, right? They'd make sure everyone got what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you let every team take care of it, well, EG is going to handle it one way, and Curse is going to handle it a different way, and Marn's going to handle it a different way, and Velocity is going to handle it a different way, and you're going to end up with all of these different things happen. And again,
I mean, I actually have a point here that I just thought of, which is that it's actually true that in a very, very indirect way, this is Riot's fault in this sense. That in League of Legends in LCS, Riot doesn't allow organizations in the West to have more than one team be in LCS, because they don't want that to be the case, okay? They want it to be like separate organizations and build up other organizations and stuff like that. Whereas in Korea, it's standard to have two teams, not only for like practice reasons, but just then you have another team that could go to the final, Now, if they allowed you to have two teams, I can already tell you right now, there would be at most maybe 4, maybe 5 organizations in LCS right now in NA. Because there'd be 2 CLG teams, there'll be 2 TSM teams, there'll be 2 Curse teams. I don't know if Dignitas would have 2, but you see what I mean. All the 8 teams would be taken up by the big organization. And by the way, I don't have a problem with that, because actually then that would give proper support to those teams. But if you block it so that they can't have 2 teams, and then you let some scrub team like this qualify, who have no clue what they're doing, and then you just toss them a stack of 175k, then I could totally see this going wrong exactly how it is. In fact, I'd be surprised if no team ever fucked it up like this and mismanaged or stole the money, or like that's gonna happen. Although I don't know how much you can really control it, because at the end of the day, the whole point of a professional gaming organization is they're supposed to be handling this stuff. Like, it's not the game developer's job to do the manager's job as well. If he's not a good manager, then he should be fired, or someone else should take, you know what I mean? There's other ways of fixing it, I think, than... Unfortunately, in League of Legends, everyone just goes, Riot, please, and they wait for them to fix everything. Like, you have to take some accountability yourselves, guys.
And, in retrospect, like, my idea is, like, the exact wrong thing to do, because I just explained with the apartment complex and Riot running everything, I just explained CGS, because they owned everything. They owned all the teams. They owned all the brands. It was theirs. There was no...
Or Kespa.
Or Kespa, in a way. Well, I think there's a little bit of independence in Kespa. Like, I mean, CGS was every team.
You think there was a little bit of independence in Kespa? They managed fucking everything. They changed your diaper when you woke up every morning. They told you, how to deal with sponsors. They got your marketing deals. No, that's true, because I've heard a lot of people that have interacted with Korean teams point to a lot of their inabilities to market and like you mentioned earlier, they have trouble marketing and monetizing themselves because they've literally never fucking done it before. And all of Brewboy, they didn't do shit. Kespa did everything.
So they weren't able to be trained. Yeah, they weren't able to train themselves, right? Gotcha. But even like down to, well, I guess, even down to rosters and all that, Kespa really was the
absolutely everything. Yep.
So there you go. So CGS, and then you don't really have a sport. You truly have like, a company like manufacturing it all for you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me throw a controversial statement here. That since you're all American, okay, as far as I know. Okay.
Yeah.
So League of Legends is the biggest game and it's the most casual, has the most people watching. How come even in League of Legends you try to get 8 teams from NA and there's still a total fuck up where some organization are total clowns who can't do it right? Haven't you noticed how NA esports in general suffers in certain areas where they don't have enough good people doing whatever, good marketing people, good players, good teams, good Counter-Strike, good League of Legends, good StarCraft 2. NA as a region here is suffering. And it's not just that, StarCraft 2 is dying and none of our players can beat Koreans. No, there's obviously some fundamental problem, systemic, within what's going on in NA as a region. Because in Europe, you could put 15 teams in there who, in theory, manage things right. In Korea, you could put a ton of people in there. You could get a brand new organization. They'd do things right. They'd hire someone who knows what they're doing. So what is going on in NA esports that in every scenario there's this complaint of, how do we artificially prop it up and how do we help NA and what do we do to make NA bigger? Like, why is this the only region that has all these problems? Open the floor.
The biggest problem is that when you look at a lot of European players, especially like Eastern Europe, or even more of like the third world countries, kind of like the UK, where you don't really have much to do for fun, all you can literally do is sit inside and play games. So when you come to glorious America, we have all of these super fun activities.
Don't you live in Nebraska, mate?
I live in Virginia right now. Whoa, calm down.
Oh yeah, my bad.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't actually know the answer to that. I mean, to be fair, I don't think that you could compare. One thing that always made me uncomfortable is whenever people look at the failures in NA, they're really quick to point out that Europe is doing really well. But I feel like NA and Europe are both pretty equally shitty when it comes to comparing it to Korea. Would you agree with that statement? I don't really think that EU stacks up very well to Korea.
I think
it depends on what you're.
way
It
more
depends on
healthy.
how you're
EU is
relating.
worse, but it's like this,
No
okay?
way.
Korea is here in most games, and then Europe's here, and then NA is like just below.
Wait.
Europe's like a little bit.
Are we
So if
talking?
you only compare the two, Europe and NA,
Well, it
then yeah,
depends.
Europe's a little bit better.
Are we talking skill level here in the game? Or are we talking about the industry?
I'd say everything.
I mean, you can talk about everything, yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Like, are there more tournaments going on right now in Europe?
There's definitely more tournaments in
There's way more
Europe.
tournaments, mate.
Way more tournaments. That's
Europe compared to North
You're
America?
geographically closer to other countries.
yeah. You can make those drives without
But
having.
I mean, but Duncan, you make a very valid point because even if we reel it back to like when you and I were 10 years ago, and you just think of Counter-Strike organizations, right? There were always a couple in North
It's the
America
same problem back then, yeah.
that were above. You had Complexity and 3D. And again, this is even pre-EG being top of the dog. But then down below, you had 12 million high school kids that were CEOs trying to run a team, right? Had no idea how to do businesses. But you always had a couple that rose to the top. And it seemed like in Europe, you always had a couple more that rose to the top. Sure, everyone wants to start a team. And I don't know. Does it get down to the geographic? Does it get down to the marketing of it? But it's always been that way. We've always had less real pro team structure. And again, like you shit on EG all you want, man, but like they are one of the richest teams on the planet, bar none. Richest teams on the planet.
Absolutely.
So
No
he's
doubt.
doing something right?
No doubt.
But
No,
but
here,
what are the,
Scott,
Well, right
EG,
in regards
okay.
to marketing.
So remember in Counter-Strike,
Doesn't
here's
matter.
a perfect example. EG became that team. EG and Counter-Strike were a joke, okay? For the first half of
Canadian.
the 2000s,
They were the
EG
Canadians,
were
right?
a small Canadian team who would go to a CPL and they'd place 17th or 9th, and that was it.
Yep.
They were like 6th on the rung out of organizations, but they became number 1, not because all the rest are awesome and they beat them out, because they did the things right that put them to the top, and the others either stayed the same or decayed, And
Yep.
so it feels like there's a problem on an. I'm not talking just about players here. It gets too muddy if you bring players into it.
No, that's
just
what
on
I'm
an
saying.
organizational
organization, yeah. It's
tournaments,
just we've always had
teams,
less.
There's always been something lacking there, I feel like. And so I don't know how you
Yeah.
artificially do that.
That's
That's like an impossible question.
It's a really complicated question. Given the population that plays games in each, like you would expect there to be more good players in America. I'm not entirely sure why.
No, that's the thing.
It's
That's
not.
what never made sense
Yeah.
because the excuse people used to give, okay, because there's so many people play games in America, dude. I bet way more play them in America than Europe even. Well,
Yeah,
the thing
probably.
is, you would think, okay, so in Counter-Strike, the players, well, they were really worse than the Europeans. But then in StarCraft 2, okay, in general, Americans are much worse than Koreans. So you could think, well, they must just not be playing StarCraft 2. That's the obvious go-to simple fix, okay. But then League of Legends is huge, dude. More people play League of Legends in NA, I would bet, than all of Korea and Europe combined. I don't know about China because it's a huge place, but I would bet the figures are way more.
It's probably just organization. I mean, I don't know. That's a good point, though. It's definitely
Again,
a good point.
but it has been an issue for years over here. Like you've had a couple, but it's always a couple less than like I'm talking teams. Now again, I guess you could if you drill down to actual esports, there's very few that we've ever dominated, if any, on any regular basis. And and the ones that you can kind of hang a North American hat on are the console ones more than anything else. And we're just gonna leave that where that is, right there.
I mean, it's more organizational. I think the organizations in here in the NA, I think just have not figured out how to make it successful. I mean, I don't think we can even blame the players because you're right, Thorin. We have more than enough players to find talent.
But I mean,
it's
to point to what Destiny said before, that's why I said the question being set up with the implication of NA should be good and we should be able to get there doesn't make sense in this sense.
Yeah.
He's saying that
If you look
Europe
at
isn't
it-
that much different. Well, think about this.
If
When
you
have you
look
ever
at
seen a
it-
thread, Destiny, that said, how do we make Europe better in esports? How do we get the European scene more alive? Koreans still kill Europeans, bro. Like, that doesn't matter. Somehow the European scene survives. So what do you think the difference there is?
I mean, it's really complicated. That's a really complicated question.
You see how implicit within it, though, there's an impetus that NA should be good, though.
Well, that's like I said, it's a really complicated question. I mean,
have the
like you're getting
inner
into like
talent.
a lot of deep shit. Like you want to talk about like Americans feel like this has to be the best at everything. Like when you talk about North America,
Yeah, exactly.
like in Europe,
Absolutely.
you guys are all okay with having like your individual shit in your countries, and
You're
that's
okay
cool,
being
and you guys
second
feel
place,
like whatever.
Thorin.
No, I'm not saying that. Shut the fuck up. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in America. Well, this is important because a lot of Europeans don't understand this, okay? And younger Americans might necessarily feel this way, but at least my generation, like 90s kids or whatever, and the ones above, when you talk about America, America is literally has to fucking be the best at every fucking thing we do. It has to. And that comes from fucking Cold War era thinking where democracy is king and fuck the... everybody who communism, blah, 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 like America has to be the biggest fucking thing in the world. So as far as like how much of that attitude is still carried over, where you're talking about like America has to be the best, MLG, IPL, fucking America, or why is Korea doing better, or why is Europe doing better? Like, I don't know like how much of that kind of attitude kind of carries over and how much that influences. So when you talk about like, would Europe ever make a thread like, well, why isn't our esports dying? Like, I don't know, like, do they care about it as much as like North America, where Americans are like, why isn't our esports the fucking best in the world? Like, why are we letting Stalin
I've got the analogy
country?
for you.
I don't know how. Like, it's a really complicated question.
Well,
here's my closing analogy on this topic. Okay, have you ever seen that TV show called The Newsroom?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's fucking terrible. Don't know.
Okay, so the first episode of The Newsroom, that is exactly the question that we're existing now, right? This person who's a famous news anchor, he's at this, like, giving a talk at, like, Northwestern College or something in front of students, and some naive, blonde-haired student goes, why is America the best country in the world? And then he goes off on the fact that it isn't, and
he goes off on it, but his fucking
bro, we're not talking about those
was like the worst. That show was terrible. That guy was terrible.
I'm just saying that sort of question, how do we make anything better, is the same as her question. It's like a naive question because it has an assumption that it should be the best.
Sure.
But based on what, It's esports. It's not anything political now. It's just what you can do inside a server. So unfortunately, you can't have all this bullshit that you imagine. It's just what you can actually tangibly do inside a server. At which point, waving a flag around doesn't help you at all. Apparently, inside, just being Korean and being really good at practicing and good at the game helps you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
I'm not sure. It's a good question because like if you just look at the population, like if you just analyze it in a pure stats thing, like how many people play fucking in each country, you would imagine that most good players would come from America, then Europe, and then Korea. But obviously, Korea has a disproportionate number of good players, given the amount of players that play there. So it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer.
I mean, I can give you my very simple, quick answer, which is that in general, it seems like Korea, everyone is just more serious in general about things. Because, for example, one of the things that players say in League of Legends, the reason they can recruit players for top teams from solo queue is because even when people play solo queue, they play as if they were professionals when they're not professionals, okay? They they learn the champions, they learn the metagame, they play properly, they play their roles, they play as a team even on solo queue. Whereas in NA, if you go even to the top of solo queue, it's all like troll games and even good players are just being lax and they're not playing disciplined and playing stupid. Like, as a general approach to things, I think that's why you get less serious things in NA and you get more serious in Korea.
That's pretty generalized, though, man. There's plenty of people who are really serious about it. That's why I always point back...
What do you mean by plenty? There's not more than in Korea. Korea's one country.
We have our population's a lot larger than Korea's. Okay, so like even if the percentage is different, it's my point is that kind of what I was saying before. It's the organization. It's the difference in the organizations. Korea, the organizations, you can say they're more serious or whatever, but they put a structure in there that the players, they're going to get the proper training. They're not going to get as much of this crazy marketing as we're seeing over here, so they're not distracted by that. It's a different structure and a different culture there.
Yeah, but that structure built up
has nothing to do with
no one just put it in place.
What now?
That structure built up organically in a way that made sense. It went step by step by step by step, and that's where it got to now. It's not like see. That's when people say, "How do we make the NA scene good?" They want someone to make a system like Korea and just put it in place in NA, and then put all the teams in, and then they're going to be like Koreans.
Oh, don't get me wrong, Thorin. I agree. I don't think we should be copying anybody over here. I think we need to do something different, more innovative. I mean, for what our culture and what's happening in the U.S. But
what I meant by more serious, though.
Okay.
Like, think about it this way, okay? People always use the excuse in the West that if you're not a top pro, for example, in NA, you won't have a good enough salary that maybe you'll devote all of your time to practice and you won't be practicing in such a serious way. Maybe you'll play a bit and then you'll practice a bit. It's a myth that in Korea, the reason they practice is because they have this infrastructure and houses and teams. That's putting the cart before the horse. That infrastructure exists because they practice like that. If you go to the history of Brood War, back before Boxer and all those guys were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, they used to live like 11 people would move to Seoul and be in a semi-pro house where they were eating ramen noodles all day long and they had no money whatsoever, and they were hoping they won the next big tournament so they could keep going as a pro. Otherwise, they're going to be broke. It's because they're so fanatical and so serious. Like, that's what I mean when I say serious. Like, they're willing to go out there before they have all the pieces in place, the salary, the practice, the team, all the rest, and be a professional in the game then. Whereas the NA person, they're like willing to risk a little bit. Like, I'll try some tournaments, but then if it doesn't pan out, like, I'm going to pull right back and I'm going to go to my backup plan, or I'm going to go to do something else. They want everything else in place before they'll put forward the effort. Like, that's my take, at least, anyway.
So you're talking, you're talking players.
Again, that could be like super complicated cultural. Like, is it because everybody in North America and EU is told, like, when they're growing up as kids that you don't have to be the best or blah blah blah, or you are the best, you don't have to work for it, as opposed to Asian countries that are more strict discipline. Like,
here's the thing, you're right.
That could be, that's like the problem is that question is like so insanely complicated. You would need like a sociologist to just come in and break down like all the different aspects.
I did an interview with Chobra, that translator guy who lives in Korea, and he grew up in Korea for like maybe 12 years. Then he went to America, lived there for like 6 years or more or something. Now he's gone back to Korea. So he's one of the few people who can actually know both cultures, but also translate from Korean into, like, culturally into the West. Just watch the interview I did with him. It was Grilled Chobra. And we talk about exactly these things. So he explains about how the fact that, you know, in Korea, like, what's like the Asian parent syndrome, like, you have to be the number one. Like, it doesn't matter if you're number two, who cares, you're a loser. Like, you have to be number one. Also, there's all these cultural things, like, you must obey the rules, and like, I'll give you a quick example before we close this topic, because we talk way too long here. But here's the quick example I'd give you that's totally different from NA, okay? In NA, if you were the star player and you join a new team, you're the fucking star player. You're the best player there. Everyone else has to respect you, and you're going to call your shots, and, you know, I'm the star and all that. Look at what I do in the server. If you're Faker, who was like the best solo queue player maybe ever in League of Legends, and he gets to join a brand new team, SK Telecom, a big organization, when he comes into that organization, he could be God inside the server. He's a new person joining a new organization. He's a scrub who starts at level 1, and even people who've been there before him, who are worse, who are his teammates, are considered like more respect than him, and he has to follow the rules, and he has to work his way through the hierarchy and find his place and know all these roles. That's like a totally different cultural way of thinking about things. Whereas in the West, it's like we go off talent and stuff and how famous you are and all these sorts of stupid factors, you know.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. It's just, again, like how we try to harness the differences is the problem that needs to be solved. And I don't think any organizations do a good job of trying to solve that right now here in the U.S.
Sure, but again, it might be a situation or something that's too complicated to just solve. Like, it's not as easy as that. Like, you would have to find like a group of gamers out of the womb and like train them from birth to have the attitudes and whatnot that would be necessary for them to compete.
See, you're agreeing what I'm saying in a way here, which is
that's
why, as a question, it's stupid to think that NA should or could be as good as Korea, for example. Because maybe culturally, the things that make you really good at video games and being good at practicing come from their natural culture anyway. I don't think they were artificially created.
Yeah, but nobody wants to think that because that's really that's a super uncomfortable truth to confront.
People are in denial.
Or even a super uncomfortable question to ask. Yeah.
Well, it's a different. Really, I mean, the culture. Yeah, also too, Thorin. I mean, yeah, a lot of those players did put in a lot of the investment, you know, time or whatever you want to say, and investing into something that wasn't there yet. But you have to, you know, the impact of what happened over in Korea is that, you know, it is more respected. Being a gamer over there is more respected than it is.
Well, hold on. Well,
look at my interview, dude. Seriously.
Hold on. Yeah, that's not true. That's not
in
true.
Korea,
a lot of people seem to think
if you become a pro gamer. Okay, if you become a pro gamer in Korea, unless you win the massive tournaments, you're a fucking loser who threw his life away. And there are tons of people who move to Seoul and they go in a semi-pro house, and me or you will never hear from them. And they're going to waste 10 years of their life living on ramen and shitty food. And then eventually there'll be nothing. Here's the problem, okay? That's not the biggest loser. The biggest loser is the guy who comes to like the semi-finals, and that's the peak of his whole career, was one OSL semi-final. But to get there, he had to train 6 years, and his family disowned him because he left and he didn't go to school and he quit when he's 15. Dude, it's even less respected there. It's just that it's a sport. So as a result, it has its own niche.
There's a huge misconception in the West that in Korea that it's super reviewed and whatnot. It's definitely not. Do people revere them in gaming communities? And that's the only. And you have to consider that's the only exposure the West has to the East, or namely Korea. We only ever see them in gaming communities. So it's easy to fall into the trap such that I only ever see Koreans when they're celebrating gaming. So obviously those people are revered. But like Boxer is like the only person to gain notoriety in Korean culture, such that everybody kind of knows him and respects him. But other than that, I also think like MVP's parents were supportive of him. So like you can find the oddball example, but for the most part, if you're a pro gamer in Korea, unless you're like fucking on top, you're pretty much the same way that people view you in NA. You're like, ew, you play games? Like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you're not going to school for anything?
No, I mean, believe me, I know
like,
the MKP story. I mean, so it's,
sure. Okay,
yeah,
so
it's
in Korea, there is not some reverence for gamers all over the community.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about two more quick questions, and then we'll wrap. I got a question for Scoots and Thorin. Who do you think should get the casting gig for the DreamHack CS:GO tournament or championship? Who's your ideal combo?
Well, that's two different things, right? Because my ideal combo might be some people that don't even do it anymore.
Realistic.
Yeah, because I would say Joe Miller, but he doesn't do it anymore. I would like to see Thorin on either an analyst desk or, as the second chair color commentary analyst guy. Anders, play-by-play. He's been carrying the torch. He does a good job. Listened to him the last couple of days. He's still got some things to work on, but he's very, very forthright in learning them. You know, his caster ego is not there yet. There's not a whole lot of guys doing it right now. I think a lot of people would say Corey Dunn as an American guy. He's one of the few that is still kind of casting over here. There's a couple lesser guys. Wouldn't want to see them there. I like Corey. Corey's got a great voice. All
right. That's a lot.
I mean, there's a bunch of players. I mean, again, I'm a huge player guy. Like, I don't need the fluff. Like, I would love to see. Again, this is probably not even a popular choice, but Lurpus told me because he's a straight shooting motherfucker. But he's not a fan of CS:GO. He shit all over it. So, like, is there a question of does he deserve to have the gig? I don't know. But he comes from a perspective of a strat caller and an ex-player. Not always perfect. But again, like, he's going to keep it real. And again, like I said, I am involved in it, but I don't know who they're going to pick. Semmler's doing a lot of stuff with the game. I listened to Semmler and Anders today. They are a nice little combo. I think the game is still really, really new. And again, that's why I lean to like these guys that don't even do it anymore because Joe's a pro. Joe, and like, Thorin, have you done any Go casting? I haven't seen you do any Go casting, but again, I would love to see.
Who's your ideal? Thorin, you can say yourself too. It's okay. It's okay to say that.
I mean, I think I would be the best color caster just because I have in mind what I think a color caster should do, and I know what my own strengths are, and I never try to like veer from those strengths. So I admit I wouldn't be a good pick for this tournament because I'm very, very unpopular because people don't like my opinions. So I definitely would not be a good pick in that sense. But in an ideal world, yeah, maybe I would pick myself. I would also, though, like actually the real person I would pick for the analysis role would be Lurpus. Because he's like by far first of all, of any European who isn't native English speaker, he has by far the best English of anyone. And he's also got a really good insight into the game. And I think he even does the casting pretty well. So he's like a lock. I would definitely put him there. The play-by-play guy is harder because, like you say, a lot of the best ones don't do it now. And the fact that the game's so small and has such low stream viewers means that the people we've got now are just like either people who are left or people who just appeared recently. So they haven't had time to get pedigreed and be really good. So yeah, I would probably just pick Anders just because he's the guy who's stuck with the game now. He's the best of like the new school who's doing it a lot. So fair enough there. I mean, nice if Joe Miller could do it, but I can't see any way someone could pry him away from League of Legends.
Yeah, of course not.
And plus, if people really want to talk about who deserves it, then there's a degree to which people like the Toby Wan and the Joe Miller, do they deserve it though? Because they don't give a fuck about CSGO to some degree in as much as that's not their choice of game, unless it's going to be a big game like this. It's going to become a big tournament with 250k and stuff. Like Toby Wan's a good example I'll give where I definitely don't want him to do it. Because actually, I'll give you an example. Okay, he's a passable play-by-play caster. He doesn't know that much about CS, but even worse, I know a backstory of where when some people, I won't mention who, did some Dota 2 casting who weren't from Dota 2, he like shit all over them and he went off on about how people shouldn't do games they don't understand and it should be the best person in that game. Well, okay then, mate, suck a fat dick. You're not doing CSGO. Get the fuck out and go back to Dota 2.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, like,
Right.
you don't see it very often, but there is a pretty, Pansy, who is a female, who you never see in our world.
I like Pansy.
I think Pansy, you know, again, it's not her. Like, she comes from a Call of Duty background, and she's doing a bunch of different games for Turtle and ESL. But again, I've listened to her Counter-Strike Go. I listened to some of her first casts, and she's vastly improved since then. You know, Red Eye. There's a bunch, right? But then you get into this: who deserves it, who doesn't, and like you said, Thorin, you're a terrible fan pick, right? Because no one likes you. But like, for the guy that
also,
wants to hear the truth,
I even know sometimes when I'm going to say something, okay, this won't be popular. And the problem is, I could sometimes not say it, and okay, I'd get to say 75% of my opinions, and it'd be not as bad, okay. But I'll always still just think, like, I'm just going to say it anyway.
Of course.
So the problem is that's going to make you as unpopular as you possibly can be.
I'd rather hear the good stats and the I'd rather be educated than care if I you know. Right. You know what I mean? But again, I'm not the majority when it comes to that.
Okay, last question, guys. The Pt.3 asks, what would you think if SC2 shifted away from a 1v1 dominated scene into a more team-based scene? What if WCS was a team-based league? What do you think would change in the SC2 scene?
Does he mean like team format 1v1, or does he mean like we're making this 4v4?
Yeah, I think team format 1v1, so like Pro League style, I think.
Yeah, Pro League style. Okay.
What do you guys think? Steven, you have any thoughts on that? Do you think StarCraft would be more popular as a team sport in that regard?
I don't know. It doesn't change any of the core game mechanics. Like, no? That's my answer? No. I don't think it would help much.
I think it would be way worse. I mean, team-based StarCraft 2 is just much worse. It's not as interesting. I mean,
some people would argue
with that, jazzed up. Okay, tell me a StarCraft 2 team tournament that's as good as the best StarCraft 2 1v1 tournament.
Or that's as good as even a mediocre.
Well, I think Pro League is...
It's just not as good. The problem is it is a 1v1 game, so even the team mode is just a bunch of people playing a bunch of 1v1s. Now, you can make it a little bit more exciting by doing an all-kill format, and they stay on and they keep going there. But even then, it's still just a 1v1 game. And so, unfortunately, I can't see how it could ever be as interesting as the 1v1. So to me, it'd only make it worse. Now, if this guy wants to do it, then go ahead, but I can't see how it could possibly be better.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be different, and again, people do get into it. Like, people do like it, you know, and it adds a different storyline, you know, than just best 3 1v1 of 2 guys playing. Because there's that: is he going to win it for his team? Is he going to stay seated down? But at the end of the day, better? No, I don't.
I mean, Pro League was for Brood War, Pro League was the standard, right? I mean, that's why Brood War was so perfectly, not designed, but why it ended up being a very good system, okay? Because what you did is, your job as a pro gamer, the reason you're going to practice all the time is because in 2 days you're going to play a Pro League match, or you might play a Pro League match, okay? Yeah. So every day you're practicing for your next Pro League match. Now, if you happen to also be amazing individually, then maybe you'll also be in an OSL and you'll be in the round of 16 and you have your opponent there and you can get a little bit of time off, but you're still going to practice for Pro League in the middle. So what happens is, Pro League is the bread and butter daily esports in Korean Brood War, okay? Then you have the OSLs along with it, like intervals, and it's spaced out so it's not on the same days. That's why you can have constant daily content, almost, and have the tournaments as well. It was like the best of both worlds. Whereas we were just discussing before, having individual leagues that are 1v1, but they're a league. Again, they're trying to sort of get part of that, but they're not doing it quite as well, because in 1v1 it tends to work better just as a tournament, you know. And so that's almost like attempting to do the two things there, but I don't think you can do it, because the reason why the Brood War system can't be emulated is because every single team lived in Seoul, and they could all play offline in the same studio, like a mile away from where they lived. And so, unfortunately, the worldwide aspect wouldn't work there. Like, for example, how could Team Liquid even field a team unless it's online? Because they have to have Tasia from Korea and stuff. And immediately, as soon as you go online, immediately the tournament gets a bit less interesting as well. And also, I can't see how you could have tournaments where you fly like 7 people out there just for like 1 or 2 matches. Yeah,
I think that's too much money.
Logistically, it would be a lot more expensive. There's no doubt about it.
But definitely fans like both. I mean, when we did, you know, when I was doing, and EG still does the team tournament and stuff, like, it was definitely popular. People like it because, again, it gives you that different. I don't think it should ever be the thing, but it's like you just said, Thorin. You got both going, right? So you can kind of engage both sides of that fan. You got Greg playing against somebody, and then Greg's going to help his team tomorrow night. Yeah. And then Greg's back to, you know, and I like both, but I think.
Well, it's kind of there's a selfless feel to it, and StarCraft 2, I think, generally has a very selfish feel to it because it's a 1v1 type of competition thing.
Yeah.
And even when you're teammates on a team, I mean, you guys, they don't act like teammates.
There's tennis double. There's but tennis 1v1 rules the day. But there's doubles tournaments at Wimbledon, right?
Yeah. There's Ryder Cup. They're in golf.
And, President's Cup, Ryder Cup. A few of those. Yeah.
But okay, guys. Well, let's wrap this enormous marathon show. But it's definitely pleasure having you guys on, Scoots and Thorin. I mean, I knew this was going to be a very, very fun show, Thorin, having you on, particular since it was your first time being on one of these shows. So, you guys have any shout-outs you guys want to do? Scoots, want to start things off?
Yep. To you and Steven for having me on. Appreciate it. Don't have any sponsors or teams or players to thank anymore.
The beauty.
I'd like to thank my cat who's behind me. Again, like I said, my next thing you'll probably see me out and about or around if you don't see me is Dreamhack Winter, so I'm really excited about that. I am still doing some esports stuff, consulting, behind-the-scenes stuff. So not going anywhere. If you hate me, tough shit. If you like me, great. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thorin, any thank you, shout-outs, anything you want to say? Last words?
No, just thanks for having me on. Thanks to me for being here and having my opinions. That's about it. End of the show.
I just wish you were more talkative and you just didn't.
Man, you're so shy, dude. So shy.
It takes a while for me to open up,
I know, totally. Steven?
Thanks to Phoenix for sponsoring me. Check out their mouse pad and their mouse. Thanks to Dollar Shave Club. If you go to my Destiny.gg website, you can click on the blog and order
How do you
cheap razors delivered right to your fucking door. How mad are you? And then fucking thanks to my website guy because he's amazing and he's been doing cool shit. If you like me, subscribe to my stream. Thanks to ChanManV for having me on, and I think that's it.
Seabard's comment in the Reddit thread is awesome. He's talking about the Dollar Shave Club. It's capable of shaving your soul as well. Just kidding.
I want you to know that this is probably the hardest episode I've ever been on in terms of not making a joke in regards to the Dollar Shave Club sponsorship and SirScoots' head, but I went above that.
Hey, can dude? Talk to your people, man. I'll get rid of it. If you got any way we can make some money, I'll shave this shit right now, man. Do this.
do it
they
live
make those
on
little
air, man.
bald shavers that you put like this so you can shave your head.
Oh, exactly, right. For me, big thanks again. Big thanks to Steven for doing this every week. You two guys for coming on and just the great discussions. If you guys missed the beginning of the show or any part of the show, you can check out youtube.com/ChanManV. I'll be uploading it right after the show. I didn't get a chance to upload the first part during the breaks or anything because I didn't realize this was going to run so long. So you'll have to check it out later on tonight or maybe early tomorrow. But follow the channel if you enjoyed the show or any of my other shows, Climbing the Ladder, Wednesday Night Sprites, Value Town. It's the best way to get notified whenever I go live. And then follow us on Twitter @ChanManV, @Thorin with 3 O's, @Steven__ Bonnell, and @SirScoots. And that's going to be it, guys. So for Unfiltered, this is Thorin, Destiny, SirScoots, and ChanManV. We'll see you next time. Later.